أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم برضوان إلى يوم الدين. So today we are at Juz 15 in this series. And in Juz 15 there are only two surahs. Starts with Surah Al-Isra and then it contains a portion of Surah Al-Kahf. Both very significant surahs, and I feel there is a lot of interesting ayahs and concepts regarding in both of these surahs. So what I would do is, since Surah Al-Kahf continues to Juz 16, I will pick up Surah Al-Kahf tomorrow when we are discussing Juz 16. And today I will primarily focus on Al-Isra and just a few aspects of this surah certainly. So my purpose has not been to provide a summary of what is being recited or the summary of the whole juz. So to even give that summary, I think I require a great amount of time, because just to recite a juz takes about 40 minutes and my time here is only 25 minutes to 30 minutes. So I just reflect on some thoughts that I go through when I recite these surahs, and some verses that stand out to me based on my own personal experience and my own personal relevance, or what may stand out because of the prevalent narrations and stories that are significant in Islam. So obviously the very first ayah of the surah, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylam min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwa as-sami'ul basir. Glory be to him who made his servant travel by night from the sacred masjid, Masjid al-Haram, to the furthest masjid, Masjid al-Aqsa, whose surroundings we have blessed, to show him some of our signs, min ayatina, to show him some of our signs. He alone is all hearing and all seeing. We all understand that this verse is referring to a very specific incident in the time in the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. An incident that happened during, I think it was the last year of his life in Mecca. A very difficult time period, a very difficult life that he was facing. I think it was followed by the death of his companion of life, Ummul Mu'minin Khadija radiyallahu anha, and his uncle who was his support in the society. And he was running out of most options while he was in Mecca. And at that point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to a spiritual journey. And a spiritual journey that can only be experienced by a prophet and cannot be experienced by any other human beings. So it was a uniquely prophetic experience that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through. And there are a great deal of discussion and information about that journey of the Prophet ﷺ and what is the significance of that journey. As I said, it was a uniquely prophetic experience. He was sleeping in the house of his cousin Hani radiallahu anha. And so he described to her that he left and he came back to a journey that encompassed thousands of miles and on land, and then upward to the heaven and coming back down from the heaven. It was a very significant event in the sense that it was such an extraordinary and such a metaphysical and such a supernatural description of what he experienced, that was difficult for any ordinary human beings to even accept that something like that is possible. And indeed, that is what happened, as we understand that there are many who doubted their faith in Prophet ﷺ, and there are also some indications that there are some people who left the faith as a result of Prophet ﷺ describing this journey to him. There is a difference of opinion among scholars whether the journey was physical in nature or spiritual in nature. Spiritual meaning his soul did that journey, not like he's seeing a dream in sleep, but his soul taking that journey. We all carry soul. When our soul leaves our body, our body becomes lifeless, but we understand the soul still has a life. And so that is one of the explanations that sometimes people describe. But it was such an extraordinary and supernatural event to a world about which we absolutely have no indication what that world is like. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself could only speak in similitudes, in examples, and in metaphors to describe that event to us. So the difference is whether it was a physical journey or a spiritual journey. But for our purposes, it's a material what kind of journey it was, because it was a uniquely Prophet's experience. And what is important is his description of what he experienced, rather than spending our time discussing a question that we are incapable of answering. We are incapable of settling this question for us. And so a question for which there is no human possibility of reaching a conclusion should be left alone and should not be asked. And this is what I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to in Quran when he says don't ask questions of that kind. But a question that is very particularly relevant to our belief in prophethood, our belief in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. And one of the best responses that was given regarding this journey was from his closest friend, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, when he wasn't present when Prophet ﷺ first narrated this story to the people in Mecca. And so, since Abu Bakr radiallahu anh wasn't present, someone said, let's go to him and ask him what he thinks about it. Certainly he will denounce it. And they go to Abu Bakr radiallahu anh and they ask him, look, your friend is saying such and such things now. And to which Abu Bakr radiallahu anh responded by saying that I believe it. Whatever he's saying, whatever he has said, I believe it. Immediately, without any doubt, without any hesitation, without any lingering that he has to think about what is being said. And so people asked him about how can he believe in such things, such superhuman, such supernatural, such metaphysical description. And he said, well, I believe in something greater than that on a daily basis. And on a daily basis, I believe that revelation comes to him, that God speaks to him, that Allah's angels comes and conveys his revelation to a mere mortal human being. And so what can be greater in terms of man's wonder and him being struck by it than the fact that he receives that journey on a daily basis. So this is where I think we need to come to understand the nature of our belief in Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The nature of our belief in Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that we have come to a conclusion through external evidence, through study of his life, through all the descriptions we find about him, through all the words that he has spoken, that he is an upright, truthful person. And there is absolutely no question about that singular fact about Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he is the most truthful person of the most highest character. And so it is these two qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes as rational reasons why you should believe a prophet. That the prophets, he said, look at their lives. And Prophet sallallahu himself says through in Quran and another place that I have spent my life with you. I grew up here. I spent my life with you. Having seen what kind of person I was and what kind of person I am and what I am saying and what it is conveying to you in terms of my own material benefit and my material well-being, that it has absolutely no connection to it. So selflessness, upright character, truthfulness are the qualities on the basis of which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to rationally believe in that person for realities that are greater than that. That is not an inhuman or irrational process, because that process goes on around us with every day. A person who is our friend, whom we trust, whom we consider to be saying the truth, if he comes from some place where we haven't witnessed what happened, and he comes and narrates to us a story about that place and says, this is what I saw, the rational process is that you will take his word because of his own credibility and because you believe that what he's saying is true. If your son comes and tells you something, if your daughter comes and tells you something, if your parents come and tell you something, the people who trust the most, whom you know most intimately, then the same rational process applies to the prophets at a much greater level than it applies to any other human being. So belief in prophet comes about through this rational process of this evidence of their credibility, of their truthfulness, and of their selflessness. And it is these three qualities that should drive any rational mind to come to believe in such people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes series of such human beings. Series of such human beings whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose. Series of human beings who were all alike in their credibility, in their truthfulness, in their selflessness of having absolutely no material benefit attached to their function, what they were saying and what they were doing. And also, if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, one of the greatest things that we find is that until he was 40 years old, no poetry came out of his mind. In a society, in a culture which was drowned in poetry, in literary, in rhetoric, in all of those, their pastime was rhetoric. Their pastime was poetry. Their pastime was narrating stories in a powerful manner. And Prophet ﷺ never ever was known to express any words to that level, although he was a very honest, very truthful. He was known as the Al-Amin, and he was trusted by people, and people will trust their most valuable things and their lives to him and will not feel in any way any risk in doing so. That is what he established, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, not for 5 years, but year after year, month after month, day after day, for 40 years of his life. And then one day he comes down with a message, and he starts to utter from his tongue and narrate what is revealed to him. And what those words that come out of him, which he ascribes to a revelation, have no relationship to his ordinary speech. His ordinary speech wasn't like this. And even to this day, if you study all the narrations of prophets, all the ahadith, all the traditions that are narrated to us, and you read Quran, people are immediately able to distinguish what is hadith and what is Quran, even if someone doesn't tell them. Because there's such a strong difference between the style and the formulation and the rhetoric. And Prophet's own speaking style did not become the style of the of the Quran. It was as if he's speaking a very different language when he's narrating Quran compared to when he's speaking himself ordinarily. So, I mean, there is no shortage of evidence in terms of what should compel us to believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad an-Nabi al-Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallam. And the challenge of our time is this belief in Prophet. Because everything else that we believe, everything else that we pursue, everything else that we argue over and fight over is dependent on this fundamental belief in the Prophet ﷺ and his essentiality in understanding the revelation, his essentiality in understanding the message that he narrates to us. So this is what I had about that incident of the Mi'raj. The other significant thing about that Mi'raj, or the ascension of Prophet ﷺ to the heavens, which is what this verse is referring to, is that he came down with absolutely no new instruction except one. No new instruction except one. When he's meeting with Allah, when he's communicating with Allah, he comes down from that heaven, from that extraordinary experience, and he narrates one simple instruction, that is the obligation of 5 daily prayers. That 5 daily prayers were enjoined on us in the heavens, where the Prophet ﷺ went and was actually able to be in the company of Allah in whatever physical shape, form that could be. Our minds cannot imagine it, cannot even fathom it, except to accept how Prophet ﷺ describes it. Because when Allah describes that world, he uses metaphors. When he says Jannat and when he says rivers, and when he says gardens, when he says his hand, his feet, his face, they have no relationship to the actual thing. It's just a metaphor that he's using to make us understand those things. So we don't take them literally. We take them in the sense that they are metaphors for the actual things which human mind is incapable of grasping until he arrives in that place. And so prayer is also because of that is described as the Miraj of the believer, the ascension of everyday common human beings. And so this is where the importance of prayer and the experience of prayer is important too, and that experience needs to be cultivated in us. We need to reflect on how our prayers have become routine, how they are devoid of power, how they are devoid of spirit, how they are devoid of experience which leaves its mark on us. And so, but that's all the functions that the prayer is supposed to have, all the effects that the prayer is supposed to have on us. And if you read the descriptions of great prayers and their experience and their descriptions of what they experience while they are praying, and Prophet ﷺ described as Qurratu Aini, that it is the coolness of my eyes, that once he entered into a prayer, whatever agitation he may be feeling, whatever perturbation he may be feeling around him, all was calmed, quiet. Do we feel that way? Obviously, it is not possible for all of us to reach that height, not because we are not capable of, but because in order to reach that perfection, that height, it needs to be cultivated. It needs to be developed. We need to move towards that direction. If you're not paying attention and you are offering prayer as if we are just fulfilling an obligation of movements, of uttering some words from our tongue and nothing more than that, then we are not cultivating that experience. And we may not be able to sustain that experience in our life constantly because we go through ups and downs, emotional states in our life. But we must cultivate it to a level where at least there are some prayers that leave that impact, some prayers that stay with us once we leave them, and its effect should last. And so there is no magic formula for it. The simple formula is constantly trying to connect and remain in focus in our communication with Allah, that you are communicating before whom you are standing in your connection. And the word khushu, as described with respect to salat, sometimes we take it as an inner quality, and it certainly should apply to the inner spiritual khushu and humility. But khushu literally means to lower yourself and to bring yourself down. And so an outward khushu is important in order to cultivate that feeling. So we should pray with an outward khushu first, before that outward khushu is translated into our inner khushu. And it requires purity, where you free yourself of the dirt that results through our temptation, the dirt that results on us through our sins, the dirt that comes upon us through our anger, the words we speak, the things we see through our eyes, the things we listen to through our ears. All those things are impediments to cultivating that sense of the prayer that Prophet ﷺ requires from us. So although this journey of Asra bi Abdihi Laylam min al Masjid al Haram in al Masjid al Aqsa is not possible for any of us human beings, but we can mimic to a much lesser extent that experience through our ascension with our spirits to Allah in prayers, because prayer is what Prophet ﷺ brought back from the heavens, and Miraj was his own experience, and through Miraj he brought to us prayer, which is ordinary human experience, which is an ordinary human experience of reaching those heights which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites us to. And so this is where I think these are the thoughts I think that go through my mind when I try to reflect on this first verse, and I was just stuck on this verse, Subhanallazi asra bi abdihi laylam min al masjid al harami ila al masjid al aqsa allazi barakna hawlahu linuriyahu min ayatina innahu huwas samiul alim. So we need to draw spiritual lessons from it, because Quran is a book that tries to influence our spirit and make it more upright, and that is what we should focus on. The second verse from this same surah that I just wanted to touch upon is Inna hazal Quranu yahdi lillati hiya aqwam wa yubashshiru al-mu'minina alladhina ya'maluna as-salihati anna lahum ajran kabira. That this Quran is a hidayah, is a guidance to that which is most upright, which is straight. وَيُبَشِّرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا كَبِيرًا. And that it gives the good news, the glad tidings, to those believers who do good deeds. يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ. And it promises them great rewards as a result of doing so. So Quran connects its message to action. That the Quran is a book of action, and if you connect with the message intellectually, if you spend your life trying to research and understand every single word of it and its meanings and its etymology and its origin and its historical significance and its occasion of revelation, and yet you do not connect with the most basic message that Quran gives us, is amal, to become, to do, then we are really not connecting with Quran. Then really, no matter how many tafasir we read, no matter how many scholars we listen to, that message is not getting through to us. And so that is the primary message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. And then on the same thread it continues to the verse later in the same section. in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكُلُّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ, that we have bound each human being's destiny, fate to his neck. And this is referring again to our amal, our deeds, our what we do and what we become. That it becomes a fate for us. Because any deed, we have a choice whether we do it or not. And it remains a choice until we do it. But once we have done something, once a word gets out of our tongue, like a bullet that comes out of a gun and it cannot be put back, in the same way our deeds leave a mark on us, in the sense that it is connected. Now we carry its burden on us. وَكُلَّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ. And the word ta'ir is a reference to Makkans who were seeped into superstition and supernatural things. And they used to use the birds, flying birds, to determine their fate, or they take omen from it, or which direction the bird flies and where it comes down. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that word of ta'ir as a replacement of that fate which was used in that society. وَكُلُّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ. That once you have done something, once you have, that deed is done, once your eyes pursued something that you shouldn't see, once your ear continue to listen to what you should not listen to, once your tongue continues to speak what it should not have spoken, but it has spoken, then it becomes your burden. And so in actuality, if you want to just talk about ethics, it indicates a personal responsibility for your actions, that you are responsible for your actions, and you yourself are responsible for whatever effects that has on you and on your body and what you go through in life. One last verse, if I have a few minutes, is that I wanted to cover here, is the verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects His worship and the respect of the parents and taking care of the parents. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِندَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُل لَّهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُل لَّهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. That Allah has decreed that you should not worship anyone but Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and that you should be good to your parents. And Quran makes that connection multiple times. And we sometimes take it as an ordinary instruction, moral, ethical instruction to be good to parents. It's good to be good to parents. And it is required, and most societies recognize that. But I think the significance of it we need to understand in this context here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is connecting. That you should not worship anyone but Him. And that decree that you should only worship Him is connected with the decree that you should be kind and good to your parents. Because there is a similarity of not similarity in the sense, no, nothing can be equal to Allah, but there is something that to some very minutest level mimics our relationship with Allah. Because our relationship with Allah is the relationship of our dependency on Him to even survive here in this world. And the day we are born and we open our eyes into this world, we are unable to put even a drop of water in our throats. We are born completely dependent, can't wash ourselves, can't take a drop of water, can move, can go any place, can protect ourselves from any harm, can do anything. Absolutely nothing. There is no greater helplessness than that. And in that situation and circumstances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates parents who take care of you, who spend sleepless nights, who worry, who cry, who earn their livelihood and living and then spend a major portion of it, almost all of it, on you and on your upbringing. And so, if someone is unable to recognize that favor of a human nature, then cannot recognize the favor of Allah. You cannot really worship Allah, you cannot really connect with Allah if you don't recognize this much simpler reality which is like that. And so it is not just a simple instruction of being good, of being nice for the sake of being nice, for the sake of being good. But it is an instruction that absolutely connected with our faith in Allah. And our faith in Allah is dependent on fulfilling this one obligation with our parents. And if your heart is not prepared for this smaller reality of life, then it cannot be prepared for the greater reality of connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.